What if I told you that um, every single book you've read on self-improvement, every habit tracking app on your phone, and every morning optimization routine you meticulously follow, what if all of that is actually pushing you further away from the very thing you're trying to achieve?
Yeah, it's like we treat peace as this absolute peak of a very steep mountain we have to climb.
Exactly. You wake up, you listen to a productivity audiobook, you drink your green juice, you hustle, and there is just this constant, exhausting, low hum of self-improvement running in the background of your life.
Right, assuming that whoever works the hardest gets to, I don't know, plant a flag at the summit and finally exhale.
Well, the underlying promise of all that endless work is that if you just optimize enough, eventually, someday, you'll earn the right to finally feel at peace. But what if the map we're using is completely upside down?
I mean, it's a profound question.
It really is. Welcome to today's deep dive. If you're someone who loves a good paradigm shift, and if you are, frankly, just tired of feeling overwhelmed by the endless pressure to fix yourself, we have something really special for you today.
We're looking at a remarkable excerpt from a philosophical text called The Architecture of Peace and the Ground of Being.
Right. And our mission for this deep dive is to completely dismantle that cultural obsession with earning your own rest. We are going to explore the radical idea that peace is not a destination. It is the foundation you are already standing on.
And, the text sets a completely different tone right from the very first line. It tells us that creation did not begin in struggle.
Wow.
Yeah, before all the noise, before the long history of human striving, the original home was peace. Joy lived there before it needed a reason.
Oh, I love that phrasing.
Right. Acceptance was there before anything required forgiving. The author argues that bliss was never an achievement to be earned through suffering. It was the original soil. It was the ground itself.
Okay, let's unpack this, because this immediately turns everything I thought I knew on its head. I mean, if peace is the soil, if it's the literal ground we walk on, then our usual pursuit of peace makes absolutely no sense.
It completely reframes the whole human experience.
It's like someone running around frantically, emptying their bank account, taking out massive loans, just trying to buy the exact patch of dirt they're already standing on.
That visual, that captures the absurdity of the modern human condition perfectly.
Right. It's exhausting just thinking about it.
Well, the text points out that almost everything we are taught to value in society gets framed as an addition to peace, rather than a return to it. Achievement, vigilance, constantly proving ourselves, it all implies that peace is somewhere out there ahead of us.
Like it's a prize at the end of a marathon.
Exactly. We're conditioned to believe it waits on the other side of enough effort or, enough proof of our worth.
We think we have to build it brick by brick. Like if I just get this promotion, if I just clear my inbox, if I just resolve this conflict with my friend, then I'll construct a peaceful afternoon for myself.
But peace was never positioned ahead of us. The author uses this incredible grounding metaphor here. Peace is positioned underneath us, the way the foundation is underneath a house.
Unglamorous, but always there.
Right. It's present, it's unglamorous, and it is entirely unconcerned with being noticed. There is a line here that really anchors the whole philosophy. The author writes, "The work was never to build peace. The work was only ever to stop building over it."
Stop building over it. Man, that completely changes the assignment.
It really does.
It goes from an active, exhausting construction project to like a process of demolition, or maybe just a process of clearing the clutter.
What's fascinating here is how much burden that actually removes from your shoulders when you internalize it. I mean, it removes the pressure to produce an emotional state.
Because you don't have to manufacture it.
Exactly. Think about the implications of that for you. Peace didn't relocate when you got stressed. It waits patiently, the way a vast root system waits under a felled tree.
Or the way the ground waits under a heavy layer of winter snow.
Yes. It remains completely undiminished by whatever chaos is currently visible on the surface.
I love the idea of the ground just waiting under the snow, completely unbothered by the weather. But okay, I have to play the skeptical learner here for a second and represent our listener.
Sure, go for it.
Because if you're having a really brutal week, that idea of the ground waiting under the snow sounds wonderful in a book. But when I am spiraling or having a full-blown panic attack, I am not thinking about architecture.
Oh, of course not.
I just feel like everything is falling apart. So if the ground of peace is always there and always secure, why do so many of us feel like we're constantly sinking? How does this philosophy bridge the gap between, nice poetry and actual visceral pain.
Well, that visceral pain is exactly what the author is addressing, and the text does not shy away from it at all. It actually shifts the lens on how we view that very panic.
Okay, how so?
When pain shows up, whether it's a tight chest, a failing relationship, or just a recurring intrusive thought, our default biological instinct is to ask, how do I survive this?
Right. We immediately go into survival mode. We armor up. We prepare for a fight.
Exactly. But the text suggests asking a completely different question in that moment of panic. It asks, what am I making more of a home than peace right now?
Oh, wow. What am I making more of a home than peace?
Yeah. Like, what have you given shelter, warmth, and daily attention to while peace is just waiting outside, completely capable but never invited in?
That is heavy.
It is. The author explains that pain is rarely the absence of peace. More often, it's the presence of something else occupying the room that peace was never granted access to. And they explain this through the metaphor of architecture. Harm doesn't arrive because the original source of creation ran dry. It arrives through what the text calls unfinished rooms and gaps in the architecture.
Places where groundedness was never quite built.
Exactly. The spots where our attention drifted toward fear long enough that fear actually became furniture.
Fear becoming furniture. That is such a striking image. Let's think about how that actually works in practice.
Yeah, break that down.
You let an anxiety hang around your mind long enough, and suddenly it's not just a passing thought anymore. It's the ugly armchair in the corner of your living room that you subconsciously walk around every single day. It just becomes part of the room.
And you completely forget that the room didn't have to include it in the first place.
Yes.
If we look at this through a modern psychological lens, it actually aligns perfectly with the concept of neuroplasticity. When you repeatedly focus on fear or stress, your brain physically wires itself to make those pathways more accessible.
So that ugly armchair isn't just a metaphor.
No, it's a reinforced neural pathway. Your brain adapts to chronic stress, making it the default setting. The text clarifies that these signs of harm are not creation's core. They're just places where harm is simply allowed to exist. It compares it to the way weather gets let into a house that was never given a roof.
Here's where it gets really interesting. If we use that house metaphor, our usual reaction to pain is totally misplaced.
How do you mean?
Well, imagine sitting in your living room, right? And it is freezing cold. There's literal snow piling up on the rug.
Sounds miserable.
It is. You're shivering, you're getting angry, and you're blaming the foundation of your house. You think the whole structural integrity of your life is fundamentally flawed, when in reality, the foundation is perfectly fine. You just left the front door wide open to a blizzard.
Right. And instead of walking over and just closing the door, you spend all your energy trying to learn how to survive in the snow inside your own house.
Yeah.
You buy a heavier parka to wear in the living room. You start researching how to build an igloo in the kitchen.
We learn to adapt to the indoor weather instead of finishing the architecture. We read like 10 books on how to be highly productive while freezing to death.
Exactly, the productivity grind while shivering.
But let's bring this down from the abstract metaphors of houses and roofs to something a bit more visceral. How does a person actually feel this indoor weather? Because the text makes a major point that this isn't just a mental exercise, right? It's not just a philosophical thought experiment.
No, it's deeply physical. The text notes that the body has known all of this much longer than the mind has been willing to admit.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, long before your conscious intellectual thoughts can even name what's wrong, your body has already registered the draft coming through that unfinished wall.
The text talks about the tightened breath, the held shoulder, the stomach that clenches before a reason even arrives in words. I think everyone listening knows exactly what that feels like.
Oh, absolutely.
You open your laptop in the morning, and before you even read the subject line of the first email, your stomach drops, your jaw tightens, your body is reacting to the draft.
Because your body understands groundedness not as some high-minded concept, but as a biological reality. It experiences peace as weight meeting the ground, as your exhale meeting permission.
Exhale meeting permission.
Yeah.
That implies we are walking around constantly holding our breath, subconsciously waiting for some external authority to tell us it's okay to let it out.
We're waiting to earn the exhale. But it's really the nervous system finally recognizing that nothing in this specific moment requires bracing. When we look at the biology behind this, we're talking about mechanisms like the vagus nerve.
Right, the mind-body connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you drop your shoulders and allow a full exhale, you are mechanically stimulating the vagus nerve. And that sends a literal chemical signal to your brain saying, we are safe. You physically shift out of the fight or flight response.
So it's not just woo-woo philosophy.
Not at all. The author argues that this physical recognition, that profound feeling of not having to brace yourself, is actually a direct connection to that eternal knowing handed down at the very start of creation. It's still intact under all those layers of modern stress. Your body remembers the original soil.
Okay, so let me ask you this on behalf of our listener. Say you are sitting at your desk right now. Your shoulders are up to your ears. You're prepping for a high-stakes meeting, and you feel that draft in the room.
The indoor weather.
Exactly. How are you supposed to physically find that ground without just faking it? Because I know I've tried to just force myself to relax, taking these like deep, angry breaths while my mind is racing, and it absolutely does not work.
Well, that is a critical distinction between performing peace and actually returning to it. But before we detail how to physically stop the lease on that anxiety, we need to look at why faking it is so dangerous.
Dangerous. How?
The text expands the scope here to look at the collateral damage of performing peace while secretly harboring a blizzard.
Okay, so if I'm walking around bracing for impact, secretly in overdrive, I must be projecting that anxiety onto the people I interact with. Does the text touch on how this affects others?
It does. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the text dedicates a powerful section to what it calls the echo chamber of this indoor weather.
The echo chamber.
Yeah. The warning here is stark. What we make a home in our bodies does not stay there. It echoes outward. It bleeds into households, corporate cultures, and entire generations.
Wow.
Existence simply doesn't stay contained to the one living it. Whatever is allowed to live in us long enough eventually speaks through us.
And what speaks through us becomes what existence starts to sound like for everyone else in our radius.
Exactly. The author uses a haunting extension of the house metaphor to illustrate this. They say, a house that has learned to let weather in will eventually raise children who think weather indoors is simply how houses are.
Whoa, wait. So not only am I letting fear become furniture in my own mind, but if I don't finish this architecture, I am actively infecting everyone around me.
That's the implication, yeah.
I'm teaching my kids or my team at work that walking on eggshells and having snow in the living room is just the baseline of existence. Honestly, that realization alone could induce a secondary panic attack. That feels incredibly heavy to carry.
It is an immense weight to consider. But the text immediately pivots to reassure the reader. And this is crucial. None of this requires panic.
Okay, good. Because I was starting to panic.
Right. It's vital to absorb that part. You do not need to panic about the panic. Why? Because the architecture is not fixed. A house that has let harm in through unfinished places is not a house with a flawed foundation.
It's just a house with a foundation that hasn't been fully felt or trusted yet.
Exactly. The ground didn't move. Peace did not relocate to a different neighborhood when the pain moved in. It just waited.
So back to my earlier question. The listener is sitting at their desk trying to force relaxation. How do they ground themselves without faking it?
Well, the text explicitly warns against what it labels white-knuckled grounding.
Oh, I know that feeling. The kind of grounding where you're performing stillness, you're sitting on the yoga mat, grip the floor with your toes, furious that you aren't achieving Zen fast enough.
Yeah, you're terrified that if your attention wavers for 1 single second, the ground will vanish beneath you.
Totally.
But that white-knuckling is still an attempt to produce peace through sheer force of will. Real groundedness operates on a completely different mechanical level. It's like sitting in a chair.
Sitting in a chair.
Think about it. When you sit in a chair at a dining table, you don't constantly reach down to check the legs to make sure it will hold you. You don't brace your core and hover an inch above the seat.
Right, you'd exhaust yourself.
Once you've sat in enough chairs, you just trust that the chair is there. You let it hold your entire weight.
So we aren't trying to build a new chair from scratch. We're just remembering how to sit in the one that is already holding us up.
Beautifully put. Peace isn't something to manufacture. It's something to remember. And remembering doesn't require new material or extra effort. It only requires turning your attention toward what was already true.
That feels so much lighter.
The author actually compares this process to remembering a song the body already knows the lyrics to. It's like a half-forgotten melody that just surfaces whole and complete the instant the first few notes are played.
It's a return, not an addition. That cycles right back to the very first point of our deep dive today.
It does. The eternal knowing doesn't expire while it waits for us to stop hustling. It doesn't harbor resentment because we ignored it for a decade. It just waits.
That brings us to the final piece of the work, if you can even call it work.
Right.
It is simply the act of noticing where harm was quietly granted residency in your house and stopping the lease. This isn't about waging war on your anxiety. No battles, no aggressively forcing it out, just returning your attention to the ground again and again.
Yeah, just shifting your gaze.
So, what does this all mean? If I can synthesize the practical application of this for you, the listener, it's like realizing you've been paying rent to a terrible roommate who isn't even on the lease.
I love this analogy.
Right. They're eating your food, they're making a mess, bringing a literal blizzard into your living room. And you don't have to get into a massive physical altercation with them. You do not have to burn the entire house down just to get rid of them.
Which is what we usually try to do when we panic.
Exactly. But instead, you just stop paying them. You withdraw your attention, which is the currency they live on, and you point to the door. You realize the house belongs to you, and the foundation is yours.
And you do this room by room, sign by sign. When you feel that familiar clench in your stomach before a meeting, you do not judge it as a failure of your personal growth journey.
That's key. No self-judgment.
You take it purely as information. It's just an architectural sign pointing and saying, here is a place peace hasn't been welcomed back into yet. You don't fight the clench. You simply invite peace into that specific unfinished room. You allow the shoulders to drop, you signal the vagus nerve, and you remember the chair.
It is a remarkably gentle approach. There's no rigid timeline. And, the text mentions that timelines are the language of things that can run out, and peace isn't that kind of finite resource.
Right, nothing has to be rebuilt from nothing. Nothing has to be summoned from a mountaintop far away.
We have covered so much ground today, literally and figuratively. I mean, we started by looking at this exhausting modern hum of self-improvement, the deeply ingrained idea that you have to earn your right to rest by constantly optimizing yourself and fighting through the struggle.
The constant hustle.
Yeah, and we've completely dismantled that using this incredible source text to see that joy, peace, and bliss are the original eternal soil. We don't have to strive for them or buy the dirt we're already standing on. We just have to stop inviting fear into the unfinished rooms of our house. We just have to feel the floorboards under our feet and trust the chair.
It represents a profound cognitive and physical shift from striving to remembering. And I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, which builds directly on some beautiful imagery from the text.
I'd love to hear it.
The author mentions that a leaf doesn't strive to be worth photosynthesizing. It doesn't wake up and worry if it's green enough to deserve sunlight. And a river doesn't audition for the right to keep moving. Existence on its own terms was never asked to justify itself before being allowed to continue.
So tomorrow morning when you wake up, and that endless to-do list immediately starts screaming at you from your nightstand, ask yourself this: in what ways are you actively auditioning for your own right to exist today? And what would happen if, just for one day, you decided the audition was already over, and the ground beneath you was simply yours to keep?
A powerful question to carry with you into the week.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the things society tells you that you have to earn. Keep learning about the spaces you occupy. And most importantly, keep noticing the ground beneath your feet. We will catch you next time.